What's going on, everybody? Today we'll be checking out Uncontained. Isn't that sick? I just got this. So I'm trying it. First time trying it. It's sick, dude. This is a game that plays for 2 to 6 players within 30 to 60 minutes and for ages 12 and up. And I'm telling you, I really can't contain my excitement for how much I enjoy this game. I also noticed this is the second edition core set. So I'm curious, was the first edition too much of an anomaly for people to handle? Now within this game, you are part of the SCP Foundation. You are scouting out anomalies and trying to contain them. Speaking of anomalies, my PC just turned on. That was weird. You heard it? That was my background music. Really cool. Throughout the game, you are collecting these anomalies. And as you collect these anomalies, you're actually gathering more power. And with power comes the greed for more power, which leads me to this. The object of the game is to collect the most points by containing anomalies. But it's more than that, because depending on the anomaly you collect is how many points you're going to get. And on top of that, the depth of the strategy that evolves throughout the game just really adds that nice sprinkle of garlic powder to the seasoning of this fantastic steak of a game of Uncontained. Now I'll show you what I mean by that. Let's hop into how to play. In SCP, you have 2 types of cards. Civilians and the draw pile, including anomalies, characters, and scenarios. Cards come with different things to recognize. You have the name, what it is, what level of anomaly it is. As you can see, I have 2 here. I have a green anomaly and a red anomaly, which count as different points for when you do contain them. And of course, you can also notice different symbols. Each symbol signifies something important and can also dictate how you run your turn. The civilians, on the other hand, are either going to be grouped civilians or single civilians, so there'd only be 1 civilian here. Most of the time, you just use them to sacrifice for anomalies, but other times there are civilians that can do other things. So what we have here is the draw deck and the public deck. Now each player in the game is going to be given 5 civilians, and that's 5 individual civilians, not grouped. So make sure when you look at your cards that you don't have any grouped civilians. Keep in mind your civilians stay face up. In the game, you have 4 zones in your player set. You have civilians. You'll also have a spot for uncontained anomalies. You'll also have a spot for contained anomalies and personnel, which if I get to them, I'll tell you all about them. On the start phase, you begin by triggering any of the play symbol cards, if you'd like to. You will then draw from one of these decks. So you could draw from the public or the draw pile. Now since I already have 5 civilians and my hand limit is 9 civilians, and that is 9 civilians, not 9 cards, I'm going to draw from the draw deck. So what I have here, I pulled the everything tree. This is a level green anomaly, which means it's worth 1 point once I contain it. And while uncontained, if you draw from the public pile during the draw phase, draw twice instead. So as long as I keep this card uncontained, I can draw twice from the public pile. So now I gotta ask myself, do I want to contain this and get 1 point, or do I want to keep it uncontained? Now since this is early in the game, I may keep this uncontained for now, and then contain it once we get closer to the end of the game. Now during the action phase, you could do one of 3 things. You can draw from the public pile, you can sacrifice civilians to contain, or you can play a card from your hand, which we don't have any yet. So I'll draw from the public pile. This player goes, and he probably going to follow the same route. He's going to grab from the draw deck, and perfect. What we have here is a neutralization specialist. He is a character card, which means he goes into my hand, and with the play symbol, once I play this character, I can trigger this effect, or this is an instant effect. Once an anomaly enters any uncontained zone, you may play this to neutralize that anomaly. So I could do 2 things with this character. He'll have it in his hand for now. Now he takes his action, he's going to draw from the public deck, and then he ends his turn. So I'll go now, I'll draw, and it looks like I got a level 2 anomaly. So he actually has a breach symbol So I have to contain this character on this turn, or he's going to trigger his breach, which means all children are going to be discarded. So on my action phase, I'll take 2 civilians, sacrifice them, and contain that anomaly. Now you're asking, why 2? Why did you sacrifice 2 civilians? Because green anomalies only cost 1 civilian. Yellow anomalies only cost 2 civilians. Red anomalies cost 3 civilians. So now I look if I have any end turn effects. I don't have the end turn symbol. Next player goes. He draws from the draw deck. He has an anomaly as well. The Lost Child. Perfect. He's going to spend a civilian to contain it. So I sped up the game here. As you can tell, both characters have some contained and uncontained anomalies, just so I can go over a couple things you could do with them. Now I apologize in advance that my play area isn't that big, so it looks all messy, but you'll get the gist, dude. So, to start off my turn, I can start with any start effects, okay? If contained, draw once from the public pile. Okay, so I'm starting my turn with the start effect, so I'll draw from the public pile, and I got a civilian. If contained, you may sacrifice a child. If you do, everyone else must discard 2 civilians. That's pretty strong. However, I do not have any children in my civilians. I wish I did. Or I wish I had a card that allows me to grab civilians that have already been sacrificed. That way I could use it for the one last lullaby to trigger. Okay, then I take my normal turn. Draw an anomaly. By next turn, if uncontained, discard 2 civilians. I don't want that. That's kind of hard, man. So I'm going to go ahead and just contain them. Now I can't contain babies, or I can't sacrifice babies. They are unsacrificable. So I'll use these 3 civilians, contain that anomaly. I still haven't gotten this one. So while uncontained, if you draw from the public pile during the draw phase, draw twice instead. Now I didn't do that because I drew from the main deck. Okay, now do I have any end turn triggers? No, I don't. So this player goes, if contained, find a child from the corpse pile. There you go. I wish I had that card. So he's going to use that. He gets his child. And he has multiple children. If uncontained, so we don't do that, and 2 anomalies. If uncontained, everyone must discard 2 civilians. Perfect. So he's going to discard 2 children. And now I have to. So technically, I just lost the game because I lost all my civilians. So wow, what a shame. Because that's a pretty great cards here. But let's say I didn't, and just finish his turn off. So you take an action. Let's say he just wants to contain, right? All right, cool. He contains that character for 3. And then, does he have any end turn? Yes, he does. If contained, you must neutralize this. If contained, you may neutralize this card to search for an anomaly in the draw pile. So let's say I did, right? All right, he is contained. So instead of keeping him for points, I'm discarding him so I can go through this deck and find an anomaly. But regardless, the game just triggered the ending. Instead of completing this deck, right, I actually lost because I lost all my civilians, which is one of the 2 ways that you could end the game. Losing all your civilians, you lose, or the deck ends, right, depletes, and then you count how many points you have. But regardless, looks like our player over here did win. But if I did not lose my civilians, I would have had 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 points here, and he would have had 3, 4 points here. So I was winning, but he knocked me out. So, there you go. That is Uncontained. Alright, the things that I like about this game. First and foremost, once this game really picks up, usually about mid-game, things are really popping off when it comes to that take that aspect. I mean, you have so many different powers and conditions, and you can distribute these powers across all your opponents. You know, certain cards can be Uncontained in order to like discard cards, or you have another anomaly that can turn all these civilians into like a specific civilian type, and as you're gathering these anomalies, you're just recognizing like how hungry you are for more anomalies, which is probably my favorite part about the game. Is when I first start playing, it's like, okay, I'll get a couple of anomalies, but then I start getting more anomalies that are just really tearing it up, and I'm like, I need more. Like, well, I want that one off my opponent, so maybe I can find an anomaly where I could take other anomalies that are already contained. And it's just like the concept of watching your greed grow is just super unique, and I love how I was able to naturally feel that playing this game. One of the neutrals I do have with this game is the rulebook is a little clunky. It's something that you do need to read multiple times, and you have to date back to and be like, wait a second, am I doing this right? Eventually, yes, it all makes sense, and as you're playing, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, this is obvious now, but it does take a little bit of time. The thing I disliked about this game is, unfortunately, it drags with 2 or 3 players. When you play with 4 through 6, there's enough like cards that you could draw from that aren't from the public deck, where it feels like the pacing and the length of the game all like come together very well. But for a 2-player game with that giant stack of cards, it could go on for quite some time because you don't end the game till that deck is empty. So I would probably suggest, depending on player count, you decrease the size of that deck. I don't think you don't need to decrease it by much, but just enough so the timing doesn't like expire with how fun this game is. Strategies. Wow, there are plenty of cards in this game that I think mesh really well together. It's a combination, and I like that the game doesn't actually emphasize or pressure you to combine cards, but you'll just notice, like naturally, some of the cards in the game are like, man, these 2 together are unstoppable. And there's just more than 1 or 2 good combinations. Depending on how you play and what anomalies you're able to get together, you're able to see like, okay, I can start my turn off with this anomaly, then I could go my basic, I'll draw a public, or I'll draw a card, I'll get another public, but then I have an end of turn ability, or multiple end of turn abilities. So as you're like collecting anomalies and really recognizing like how you should start your turn, how you should end your turn, it just gets really fun. And the strategy is so upbeat. And what I mean by that is you're not sitting there trying to like focus up the next 5 to 10 turns, which you could, but it's more of like, I'm on my turn now, what can I do and what do I need to do in order to survive for the next turn? And that in itself is just really cool. Final thoughts about this game. I thoroughly like it. I'm not gonna lie, my first few playthroughs, it was just okay. But as the game became more recognizable, once the rulebook really became clear, it snapped, it made sense. It was like an anomaly. Like I mentioned earlier, the whole like growth of greed is really fun. The way that the cards combine, you're really seeing yourself turn into this monster yourself. It's like, oh man, I need to knock this guy out of the game. He has a couple civilians left, but if I uncontain this anomaly, and then if I end my turn with these cards, not only can I take some of his civilians, but I also have everybody discard the civilians, and then I can, and it's just like, you're working these awesome plans up in your mind. So, is this a game I think you should have? Well, it's a very good take that game. I think it's not the friendliest take that game. I'm sure you can lose some friendships in this type of game. I think the cards themselves are really cool. They're all unique. They all do something different. And even the civilian cards like have different types. So they all also interact with the game in unique ways. The artwork isn't too scary. I do wish the artwork was scarier, but that's just a personal opinion. The artwork's actually fine the way it is. I think it fits the style of game really well. But to have like some excruciatingly scary SCPs showing up, that'd be pretty. If you liked what you saw here, I will have a link in the description so you can check out the game on your own, among other things in the description. If you like this video, it'd be awesome if you can smash that like button. Leave a comment. If you are familiar with the SCP, I am curious, what's your favorite SCP story? We all know the main one with the one SCP that when you don't look at it, it gets violent, but when you look at it, it's just a statue. That's my favorite SCP. I think everyone knows that SCP. And of course, subscribe. That would be awesome. I'm almost at 300 subscribers, and that'd be a cool milestone to hit. So, with that being said, I will see you in the next review.